right away instead of 15 minutes into the meeting. So I'm just checking the list here. All right, well, looks like we have a lot. Great. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, welcome everyone. I'm thinking you can see my screen. Let me just double check. Is that correct? Are you seeing the agenda up? Great. We have a pretty packed agenda today, and as usual. So just thinking about how, since John can't be here, channel him a little bit about getting ready for this meeting and the use of the chat box. I have very much a similar kind of experience with chat. As I'm facilitating, it's really difficult to see it. And we do enjoy hearing your voices too. So if we could maybe raise your hand, since there's a smaller group of us, we could see you better. You could put in the chat, I'm raising my hand, and either Lisa or I or Sydney will catch it. So just kind of thinking about the best way to use chat so that we are more engaged and not having to multitask quite as much. That seemed to work really well last time. And then just wanting to just do a quick call out to everyone on this meeting. Thank you so much for letting us know you're the leadership representative for your agency. We did redesign this to be just a little bit smaller, so we had leadership. We found that the invite was being forwarded to people we didn't know, and some of you would check, so I really appreciated that. But it did seem to get forwarded and forwarded and forwarded, kind of like this really big long chain, and communication would get out, and it would just be kind of cumbersome. And it turned out we didn't have an opportunity to really have some debrief and reflection time too. So kind of really focused on the information we talk about, the messages we share at this meeting is really for you as leaders in your organizations, and then having some time on how you will share that with your staff. So I appreciate that. And then, as we've asked, if you do want to bring someone else in, please check with John, Lisa, and me, as there may be something on the agenda that you believe one of your team members needs to participate in for specific reasons. So just be sure to check with us first. So welcome to all the CCR&R directors, 211, DHS, the Research Institute at Western Oregon University, PSU Center for Career Development, and Inclusive Partners. And we also have, of course, your ELD support team is here, and our ELD leadership with the Community Systems team, Joan Blau. So with that, let's go ahead and start with just some quick updates, and then we're going to dive into a little bit deeper discussion regarding Miriam's letter and state reduction. So let's start with Hannah. We put you on first because we do know that you have a baby, or a toddler, I should say, and you have some specific times around that. So you want to start with updating us about substitutes?
Thank you, Margie. I appreciate it. Yes, towards the end, it's lunchtime, and that's just a disaster. So hello, everyone. I just wanted to give a quick update to the substitute process and connecting potential subs in emergency childcare facilities. And so I'm just pulling up some information. Hold on a second. So as of
Hannah, do you need the screen?
I don't think I do. No, I'm just gonna direct people to the ELD website. So we have done 83 different substitute referrals across the state of Oregon, and more keep trickling every day. We are now directly calling and updating with subs to see if they had any placements, calls, if they're still available and willing to work. We are hearing from some certain communities that subs are now on unemployment and no longer want to work in emergency child care facilities. So we are starting to kind of hear some feedback from folks that they're no longer wanting to try and participate in being an emergency sub. What is important for you all to know, we did send out the links and the emails that we've been sending out to programs about subs, but it's now also available on the ELD website in the provider section in the COVID, where people can go and do that request form for a referral to a sub. So it is available in English, Spanish, and Russian. We are currently getting it in on our website at the Research Institute as well. And so we would just want you guys to know that if you are hearing from programs, I know you guys have the links and been sending them, but if there's any ease in letting people know it's on the ELD website and linking to that provider section, they are there as well. So just something to be aware of if that might be more useful. I think Margie's pulling it up right now. And it's over on the right-hand side. There's a little blurb about what an emergency substitute is, what they had verified, and then the request forms. Start talking, and he has to come over and join. Let's see, we have sent out 941 substitutes information out to all those 83 programs. We've had a pretty even request from family child care and center-based care, about 32 family child care requests, 31 centers, and then some school-based programs as well. We are anticipating that this kind of still continues to be a slow uptick, but we're really hoping to kind of see where this evolves and what kind of information. But we kind of hear back from subs as we connect directly with them over these next couple of weeks. We've been sending out update forms and trying to connect with them that way, but now we're trying to intentionally call and really kind of understand what their world is like and what their availability is. So just wanted to give that update and see if anyone had any questions or heard anything in their communities we should be aware of as we kind of move this work forward and try and continue hopefully supporting programs. We do know that we had a substitute hired in one community, which is really awesome. It's our first official placement that we know of. And so we're hoping, we know that people have connected with a lot of subs, so this is the first one that we know is officially hired. So that's exciting. So I'll pause there and see if there are any questions. And Danae has a question. I will call on Danae.
Thanks, Hannah. How are you? So my question is, we have gotten all of our emergency subs have been like the top 3 people who are getting referred in one community, even though there are centers and family programs that are open. And so I'm wondering how 211 is, because they've been getting calls and saying, well, we're just emergency subs for a center. We're not trying to do, and Taya had explained that, yes, there is like kind of a private nannying thing, which we really don't know much about, but we feel a little concerned that our centers and our family child care are not getting the referrals because people who are meant to be working in centers as substitutes, like that's why they signed up, are actually getting referrals from 211. So I'm just kind of confused about how the process is with assigning referrals.
So I'll let Carrie answer part of that if she's on, but what we do know is that if people indicated that they were willing to do in-home and nanny type care as part of that referral, if people had indicated that they wanted someone in their home, then they were referred out to those folks that said and that met the requirements and the verification of those specific health and safety trainings and background check. So in my first gut is that it's a parent request potentially, but can we work offline and I'll just take a peek at the records in the county and just kind of see if there's anything. And since we are directly updating, we can connect with subs as well.
Definitely. And that did make sense, Hannah, when you said that. So thank you for answering.
Yeah, I agree with what Hannah said. We're just going off of which ones in NACRAWare have said that they're willing to provide care in people's homes. What I will say is that we get a lot of requests from parents even before COVID for that type of care. And so people are actually really excited about it. The other issue, I think sometimes is that there aren't a lot of providers in certain regions. And so as kind of a second option, we sometimes do send out the subs as a referral as well, if they've said that they're willing to provide care in someone's home. But people are excited about that type of care. Some people really want it.
I guess this is a different question, maybe not for 2-in-1 then, but when they are applying, I'm assuming they all are put through a background check process, but I'm concerned about sending someone into a home if we don't know what their qualifications are. And I do trust the people that I know are on our sub list, but I don't know really what that process looks for applying to be an ECC individual person. I would assume that they would have to be at least aide or teacher qualified to work in a center, correct?
So I'm wondering,
can you speak? Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just wondering whether or not we actually might want to do a presentation or something on one of these calls, because I think fundamentally, we're not sending anyone to anyone's home. These are referrals, and families have to vet them, and this is all driven by parent choice. So I think part of what I'm hearing is that we need to be able to be comfortable communicating that families, especially in this time, if they're reading the news and tracking what's going on, and often if they're essential personnel, they're not going to want to choose to take their children to a place that is not their home. So how do we build respect in the provider community for family choice? Seems like something that we need to spend a little time talking about at some point. I'll let others talk about the fact that everyone on this sub list at this point has had to meet background checks, and most of these people meet our highest standards for background checks, but it's still parental choice, and they make the decision about who comes into their home. We don't send anyone into anyone's home.
Okay, thanks, Joan. And Danae, I'm not sure if you can see the screen, but if not, and you go to Early Learning Division's website for COVID-19 under providers, you'll see how they're screened to be on the sub list. So there's a whole list of things that need to happen, but it does, as Joan was saying, and I know you agree, it goes back to parental choice and our guidance on quality. So, okay. Great. Any other questions about the substitute list or and the report that Hannah just provided? No? Okay. Okay, I didn't see any hands up. All right, so Lisa, do you want to talk about supplies and where we are with supplies?
Yeah, thank you, Margie. Good morning, everybody. Just a real quick update on where we are with emergency supplies. Some good news is we finally received our disinfecting wipes, which I know it's been one of the big requests that people have had from the very beginning. So those are now included on the order form, and we've got plenty of those to go around, so people will be able to definitely access those. We are still waiting on baby wipes. That's really the last thing that we're waiting to still receive that we put an initial order in months ago for. We would like to encourage you to, as you're talking with folks, to let them know that this is the final week for bleach orders. We had a real short timeline since we are working with the Sheriff's Office to deliver those. So definitely encourage people, if they are in need of bleach or any of the other supplies, to get on there. People can even order a second time now if they would like to, because we have had ample time for everybody to at least order once, and we would like to get to wrapping this all up with our emergency supplies. So as you're talking to folks, please let them know. We do still have diapers, formula, baby wipes, or excuse me, not baby wipes, paper towels, toilet paper, Kleenex, plates, forks, spoons, soap, hand sanitizer now, and gloves. And so definitely get the word out. Additionally, I did want to make you guys aware, last week there was a processing error where a handful of people were sent their orders twice. We are not concerned about this as there were plenty of supplies to go around. So folks do not need to return it if you get that question asked. I've already had 2 of you ask me that question. So in case you get that question, they do not need to return that. So those are the updates on supplies. Does anybody have questions? All right, thanks, Margie.
Thank you, Lisa. And we did have one more question about substitutes from Jerry. Should we be recruiting subs in our areas that don't have many available? Our communities are concerned about care for reopening. Jerry, do you want to talk about that some more?
Yeah. So I'm thinking specifically about Lincoln County, where we had 3 subs and 3 subs were referred, and the Lincoln County commissioners are very concerned about having available care for reopening. And so I'm just thinking out loud. So should we be trying to build up a pool of subs, because this is not going to go away soon? So I'm just thinking out loud. This is a strategy that isn't just something that we needed before. This is something we really need now and moving forward.
Jerry, this is Joan. I guess everyone, this is Joan. I hear that. We also, I think, understood this was a need before. I think part of the decision making going forward with how, what's our longer term plan to support the operation of emergency childcare for as long as it's needed. I'd like to talk further with the ELD leadership team about your question of should we go out and do another round of recruitment for substitutes. As Hannah said, there's been some changes in people's personal lives. There may be other reasons why someone now would want to be a sub, and then be able to come back to you either at another meeting like this or in an email to say, like, yes, we'll work with Western and figure out how to get the word out about substitutes. But there really isn't anything stopping people from signing up to be substitutes now. If you did want to promote it, I mean, we haven't shut it down. I'm acting like we haven't shut it down. If we have shut it down, someone should say, yes, we have shut it down, but I don't think we have. But we haven't marketed the opportunity for a while. So that may be something that we want to do in a different way. So I appreciate your suggestion. I think it's important for us to think about going forward. I do also want to say that we are thinking about supplies and what the next step with supplies might be, because as Lisa was saying, we're really wrapping up the situation that we have right now. The National Guard is going to be leaving the warehouse. The warehouse needs to be, kind of returned to its previous state, and but we are exploring what options might be available to offer to providers associated with supplies. We don't really have anything specific to say about that yet, so please do encourage people to take advantage of these available supplies now, with the idea that they might use them for several weeks, if not longer, while we figure out what we're going to do next, if anything.
So one more thing about the sub piece, and that is that once we do start to open and we have the ability to actually get people the background checks and some of these things that are on the sub list, I see a potential opportunity to create a pool of subs. And so I'd like you to consider that as well, that there are people who don't qualify right now, but once things open up, we might be able to be using this mechanism that's been created to create and recruit subs. So And we could be out there promoting, like, get your background check, get your first aid, get these things. Let's get you on the Oregon registry, and let's get you on the sub list so you can serve your help serve your community in this really important way. So
yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you for bringing that up, Jerry.
This is Mary, and I would really agree with that, but I want to just mention we had a meeting about this with licensing, and they reminded us that for subs in specific positions, they need specific requirements in place. So to have a more general subpool, you might want to consider, could you have a more broad, licensing requirements for subs than there currently are?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point, Mary. Thank you. We are operating under temporary rules right now, as you all know, so that does allow us to do some things that are different than when we return to the regulations as they existed prior to the emergency and the temporary orders. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Let's go ahead and move on to discussion around the proposed reductions. And Joan, would you like me to put up Miriam's letter? Would that be helpful, or do you want the screen for anything?
No, I think the letter's fine.
Okay, great. Oh, it won't let me open it. So I'll just take a minute and then, but go ahead. If you want to start talking, I can go ahead and pull this up.
Sure. So I think this falls among my least absolute favorite things to have to ever discuss with people, because in our field, this happens too often, and often, unfortunately, sweeps away years of work and dedication and service. I think what's really important to remember right now is that these are only proposed cuts, and they had to be proposed in a certain way because the governor only has certain authority associated with the budget. The legislature has different authority and a different ability, and they have not yet gotten involved. So right now we're following all the steps that are included when this kind of process gets set in motion by the governor. So the governor directs the agencies respond, that information is submitted to LFO, the Legislative Fiscal Office, and the Chief Financial Office of the state. Then agencies are directed to communicate with stakeholders. That is what's happening right now. This is also going to be posted. Further, more detailed information will be posted on ODE's website today. That will include the Early Learning Division's proposed reductions. And then, of course, we're ultimately also waiting for revenue estimating, which will give more precise information about all the revenue sources. And so we're following a process. Some of that is difficult because it's hard not to imagine these all coming true and getting very, very worried and upset about it. But I just want to encourage you, to the degree feasible, to remember that they're still proposed, they're not actual. As you can see, there are certain things that we considered when we were making these proposed reductions. I think of particular note is the fact that we did not recommend any reductions in preschool promise, and I want to talk about that first. So there were no GF reductions proposed to preschool promise, and one of the key reasons why we did this is that there are many child care providers, as you know, who operate or could potentially operate preschool promise. So we see Preschool Promise not only as a very important resource for the children to receive preschool opportunities, but also an incredibly important support for child care in the state. And so we wanted to preserve, to the degree feasible that we could, preschool promise was left whole. We also made a decision to not recommend any GF reductions in relief nurseries. The reason that we did that is because we are all tremendously concerned about children's welfare in this particular emergency that we're in. There are been 70% reductions in reports of abuse and neglect to the state's hotline. Child welfare is not making visits. We are not operating child care, licensing. Virtually every mandated reporter is not in situations where they have their eyes on children to be able to help support families to make better choices and get connected to additional support. And we see relief nurseries as critical resource for families, and we don't fully fund them. They're funded by a variety of sources, and we did not want to reduce the amount of money that we provide to them for what we believe is a crucial, essential service in helping to ensure children's welfare. So when we made those choices, they made us have to make other difficult choices. And so you can see that that then impacted, for example, it caused us to essentially recommend the pausing of any GF for the Kindergarten Readiness Fund is what you would know as KPI. That's what it's called by Hub. It's in a larger line of GF the line itself is called Kindergarten Readiness Fund, but it's really referring to KPI. So those are funds that go to Hub. So we are recommending that none of those funds would go to Hubs in this second year of the biennium. Like, that's the reduction that's proposed there. Then Hubs themselves, we took a reduction in their specific line item. Unfortunately and heartbreakingly, that meant we did still have to recommend reductions in Healthy Families Oregon, which we all know is a very critical early childhood program. We couldn't save all the programs, so we still had to make some very hard choices. And then because OPK is its own line item, it had to take the 8.5% reduction, which you can see. Early Head Start, essentially those slots were moved into OPK in this last legislative session because OPK is now a birth to 5 program. So the reduction for OPK will definitely impact some preschool services for children if they do end up becoming reality. I mean, the rest of the things you can see here, really by comparison, are quite small. You know, operations, the SSA operations and ELD operations, you know, those are cuts that we are taking to our budget, proposing that we would take to our budget. So the specific line item for Focused Child Care Networks, we did propose to pause that for this part of the biennium. However, as I communicated to CCR&R directors yesterday, we actually believe that we will have enough federal funds to either fully or nearly fully mitigate the impact of this cut to Focused Child Care Networks. Between funding that we have in CCDF and also PDG, we're as confident as I can be at this moment in where we are in the process that if indeed this does go into effect, we should be able to protect to a very high degree the QIS staff that we know are paid for out of this line item. And I want you to understand that that is a very high priority for us. And we did not make this cut lightly or without a lot of forethought of understanding that it's never pleasant to see that, even if you know that we're thinking about how we can try to mitigate it. But as I said, this is a process that has certain parts that have to be played and certain things that have to be done. And so that's really where things stand as of now. And I'm happy to take questions. I may not be able to answer them, but I'm certainly happy to hear them. And of course, just comments or concerns that you have that you might want to share.
I have a
Like Taya Harvey.
Awesome, thank you. So with Preschool Promise, because I'm not familiar with what the overall budget looks like, when you talk about maintaining it, is that at current service level, or is that what was planned for the expansion?
This process that I'm talking about that's described in Miriam's letter is only about general fund dollars. It isn't concerned with the Student Success Act. We're not going to be making decisions about that. We won't really know about that. That's how I should phrase that, not making decisions. We won't know about that until after revenue estimating. So this is about current service levels. So that's all that's paid for out of GF is current service levels at this time.
Okay, yeah, and then, okay, thank you for that. And then I guess the other follow-up question to that would be if the timeline for the RFAs that were just received is going to be adjusted. Seems like it would have to be, but maybe I'm missing something.
Well, we are actively engaged in reviewing all the RFAs, those of us that were responsible for conducting initial reviews, and several people on this call. I know both internal and external, so ELD have been reviewing those grants. So we have not changed our timeline in reviewing those grants and preparing to be able to make awards if we have the funding to do so. We intend to act as though we will do everything we can until we're told we have to essentially stop. That's our goal.
Okay, thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions, thoughts, comments? Mary?
So Joan, this would apply to the Equity Fund grant, all of those under the Student Success Act, right?
Well, these reductions, just to again make sure we're making a distinction, none of these, the only reductions that have been proposed are the ones that are on the screen, because those are the GFs that we have.
Right.
So anything, anything that would be decided about the equity fund, or anything else that's funded out of the Student Success Act, none of those decisions have been made because revenue estimating does not happen until May 20th. And so it will be after that point before it will be clear how much funding will be available and will be determined to be placed into the early learning account, right? Because that's the specific account that funds the equity fund. And, you know, to remind everyone, every line item in the early learning account was actually determined by the legislature, which is different than the funds that went to the ODE. They have theirs were determined differently. So there's a number of decision points that would need to be made after we understood the funds in the account itself as to how they would be applied towards the different line items. But I think you could safely assume that we would be prioritizing direct services to children and families to the degree feasible.
Great, thank you.
Joan, there's another question from Jerry Wolf. And Jerry, if you need to talk more about it, it's what is the thought around CCR&R staff who support new preschool promise programs, those positions that we've talked about?
We intend to still have CCR&R support preschool promise programs. I think you remember that we were actually talking about two different positions. One position was really going to be an instructional coach, And the other position was going to be more of a QIS to help programs get started. And this was in particular to target programs who had never operated Preschool Promise before. Depending on the scale of Preschool Promise that is able to be offered, would have, is related to those positions, how many FTEs, and which CCR&Rs. And that's really probably about as much as I can say about that. So revenue estimating is going to again, be another time frame that's going to be relevant related to those positions, because it has an impact on helping us understand how much money is available for Preschool Promise, and then thus where we need to place those CCR&R staff in which, how much FTE and which CCR&Rs, if not all. I mean, in a best case scenario, we'll proceed probably pretty closely to as planned. But of course, we don't know if that's going to be our reality or not. So.
Thank you, Joan. And then we have a comment from Nancy. Nancy, do you want to share your comment?
I do.
Right.
I just wanted to tell Joan,
Yeah,
thank you, because I really appreciate your honesty and your letting us know what decisions were made, but also why those decisions were made. I appreciate having that. So thank you.
You're welcome. Like I said, it is my, I would say, least favorite thing to do. And I feel like I've had to do way too much of it in my career. And I hope we all live into a future where we don't have to have these kind of conversations anymore, because this is really challenging knowing what the needs are out there for children and families. And I'm sure we all share that heartache about that.
It always feels like three steps forward and 2 steps back.
Yeah.
It's a good thing we're optimistic people, isn't it? That, I mean, as I think as a field, we have a great belief in the importance of what we do, and our commitment is so strong, and that we continue to endeavor. I do want to say that I thought there's an excellent, if you have access to it, there's an excellent opinion piece in the New York Times today, written by a pediatrician from Flint, Michigan, talking about how tired she is, that we have to be working on making children resilient, and that it's about time that we actually stop putting the burden of that on kids, and that we really are focusing on how we're building communities and resources to actually enable children to have the lives they deserve. So if you're looking for another reminder of just how important our work is, I would recommend taking a peek at that opinion piece, because it's really worth reading. And she is a hero. She is one of the people that blew the whistle on the Flint lead crisis and helped to really make it known that children in Flint were being poisoned. So I think a lot of her, and we just need to lift up people like that in our field. They're so important to our work.
Is she the author of What the Eyes Don't See? Is it what is her name again? That was an excellent book.
Yeah, I cannot remember her name. I'm sorry in this moment. Got a lot in my head.
I can send it.
Happy to send.
Yeah, I
send a link.
And that's a great book too. So I saw Taya Harvey had her hand raised.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So I guess the other thing I'm wondering about, I hear optimism about the federal funding, CCDF, and I didn't catch the name of the other funding stream. So does that mean we wouldn't be expecting cuts from federal funds? That seems pretty solid.
At this point, we aren't anticipating cuts. Of course, you know, more information could change, but for example, we've received the preschool development grant, so those funds are accessible to us. That's a portion of this. And then with CCDF, we have both the funds that the legislature gave us to spend on CCR&R this year, plus we have 2020 discretionary funds. So it's a complicated block grant, but I guess what I want to communicate to you is that we feel that at this point in time, as confident as we can, that we can cover this for this coming year. Now, you know, obviously we're in an evolving situation. You know, we can't know really what's going to happen almost literally tomorrow. But I think that it's the way that the funds are made available to states. We have access to these funds now. You know, they exist as much as any federal funds do in the sense that they're available for us to draw on and spend down.
All right, thanks again.
Thank you, Joan. Any other questions regarding this reduction exercise? Okay, let's go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, which I will pull up here. It's the grant application updates. So hopefully this will work. And I can get into it. So on our website, we have under the grant section, or Student Success Act, I'm sorry, there is information about the grants that were due just recently for the Student Success Act. So those are the ones we were just talking about. And we have actually a report here, and I'm not sure if anybody has seen this, but it breaks down what we've received. So you can take a look at this. You'll find the link in your agenda. So this gives you an idea of what we've received per RFA, per type. Preschool Promise. And then by county, so that's going to give you an idea both of the total application slots and languages, as well as the type. The equity fund, you can see how many applications by county, or OPK, and that's again broken down, and then the equity fund. Oh, I'm sorry, early Head Start, sorry, already passed that one. So if everyone wants to take a good look at that and get an idea of what it's looking like for your region, that's where the resource is for that. Are there any questions? No, okay. So with that, I thought perhaps, Joan, I will pull up the information we received from Betsy. If you wanted to talk through the ECC grants, which were actually the closing was last night. And we do have some information. Would that work?
Yes.
For me to
I don't see
okay,
it yet.
Great, let me get the, oh yeah, I'll get it. Here, I'm gonna close my screen so you don't see my many, many emails that I will get to.
So I also just want to say kudos to all of you. Did you see how many slots got applied for? I think that is very exciting news and really helps to show the case, like almost twice as many as were available. So we're, as painful as that is to know that even under the best case scenario, we couldn't award all those. I think those numbers have already been shared with the governor's office and will be used certainly by us going forward to help really make it clear just how great the need is. Kudos to all of you again for helping in this very short timeline. 2,188 applications received for the CARES grant. Phase 1, that's very exciting. We don't yet know how close we came to the $8 million in funding. That's something we'll probably know this week, and we can let you know about that. So you can see about 86% of these were from licensed and recorded programs, and then about 14% from regulated subsidy. Majority of applications were submitted in English. So these are the points here are the ones I really want, we're gonna really want your help with. So nobody is going to hear anything until at the earliest Wednesday, May 20th. So you may get people, and I'm sure you've already heard, anxious people, right? That's why I wanted to emphasize this with you, so you can say, like, nothing's wrong. This is how the timeline is gonna work. So beginning Wednesday, May 20th, and then what it's gonna be important for people to understand is, of course, some people's applications might take a little longer and they might need to provide follow-up documentation. So no one should be surprised if that happens. It's not a bad thing. It's just a part of the due diligence of the process. Successful applicants are going to get an agreement in their email. So important for people to be tracking in their email. Maybe checking also in their junk mail, if they haven't received information, though all of them should have received something as this process. So hopefully that's not a big deal. And then they'll have to return their forms to process the payment. And then you can see here, the first grant payment estimated to be sent within 10 days after returning the completed agreement. So you can start to get a sense of the timeline here, right? May 20th, agreements start to go out, they get signed, they get sent back. It's at least 10 days from that point in time. So we're looking, I think people can reasonably expect that in June, that's when their first payment is going to come. So just to help you be able to manage people's expectations, I wanted to just go over that. I do want you to know, and this is really for us to keep between us on this call, because I think it will help you appreciate that we are going to be able to meet these timelines, is that we've already looked at like 1,400 of these grants as of last night to make sure that they have all the accurate information, et cetera. So we are going to be able to meet these timelines on the notifications going out by next Wednesday, because we're working so diligently for that to happen. So timeliness is really of the essence, and we understand that. And this is, as you know, a brand new grant program. We stood this up in a matter of weeks, and we are going to be able to keep the commitments that we made to providers and that you helped them to apply for. So questions about any of this? Yeah, I can see Christine. Do you want to go first?
Thanks, Joan. I just wanted to share that we did extensive work helping people that don't speak English or Spanish to apply. So two things about that. One, I think you guys are probably seeing a lot of duplicates. It was a really heavy lift to help people set up an email maybe for the very first time. So we turned into kind of IT people for a while. So we were setting up email addresses and then helping them verify their email, in that beginning part of the application. And that was very confusing for a lot of people. So some people thought that meant that their application was done and we're stopping there. And then when we were doing like a follow-up call, they were realizing that no, they hadn't actually filled it out yet. And then some went back in and tried to do it multiple times. And then when my staff were able to get in and help them, they were realizing they had maybe up to like 11 different applications started. And so you may see a lot of duplicates there. And so some of the providers were really concerned that when they finally got one submitted, that they were afraid that you would see an incomplete one and that they wouldn't get the grant funds because you would see the incomplete one and maybe not the completed one. We felt pretty confident in saying that we didn't think that would be the case, but I want to double check that assumption. And then secondly, and it's hopefully a significant amount, maybe about 40 to 50, both Vietnamese and Chinese. And those were the ones that we were really helping with email addresses. And I'm a little concerned that they won't see that when it comes through email. And so is there any way you could notify us when those get sent out?
I will check on that. I
Okay.
do want to say that my understanding as of yesterday was that this 2100 number represents like fully submitted. So not people in the process who might have done multiples. Like, you know, the way that SurveyMonkey Apply works, you can see where people are along the submission line and you can see where multiples are. So my understanding is that represents completely submitted applications.
Okay.
But I will find out about notification to R&Rs when, are you saying like specific providers, Christine, or more like just let us know when you start emailing those out, you know, like would you guys want to send out some stuff starting on Wednesday the 20th if you knew that we were sending notices as of then, like don't forget to check the email you set up because that's where the agreement's going to come. Or I just don't know if we can share information with you about specific providers or if we could validate that the notifications have started to go out. I'm assuming we could do that part for sure.
Yeah, anything is better than nothing. And it would be phone calls for us. So we're going to have to do phone calls to each and every one of those providers. So it's not something we can blast out quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's helpful to know that the 20th, so we can start thinking around that time frame.
Great. So Mary, and then Karen Hinkmeyer, and then Toby.
So I just really want to reiterate that because we did the same thing with our Spanish-speaking providers. And especially if they're, first of all, not used to checking email anyway, even if they have one, then they had to set up a new one, which they definitely aren't going to be used to checking. And we really walked them through it, and we definitely want to be sure they get the money. So I think if there is some way that we could be notified to be sure that we can be sure that they are able to respond and access it.
Yeah, I will bring this to our leadership team meeting tonight. We meet each night, so I'll bring this tonight. Are there other? It seems like there's other stuff too. Karen and
Karen.
Then I guess. Yeah. Go ahead.
And then Toby. Yeah.
I just want to ditto what Mary and Christine said. But in addition to that, when I see those numbers, my heart sank when I saw that 6% were Spanish. You know, our team members were working diligently Friday and Monday on preschool promise applications, and then Tuesday and half Wednesday, Lead Learn Excel, and then trying to help them with emails and etc. To only see 6%. I feel like, wow, we did a disservice to those that speak a language other than English. So I have a heavy heart when I see that.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, Toby.
My question, Joan, is on those applications that weren't completed or multiple, will there be phone calls made? Because we had providers that had a Hotmail or a Yahoo account that had difficulty submitting the grant, and we worked hard. I know staff was calling them, trying to get them in connection with the phone number, with the grant application, the grant people helping to make sure that they had at least gotten one submitted out of those 5 or whatever the issues they were having. Because we had the same trouble as Christine did, even Karen, just trying to reach out to those that never used email or were trying to apply on their phone because they didn't have a computer at home, and getting them to get this money and apply for it. So are you guys going to reach out to those incomplete grants? Phone calls?
No. Unfortunately, that's not part of the process. This is unfortunate. The way this runs is if you did not have a submitted application by the time the application process closed, then you did not apply. Unfortunately, that's how it works. So.
Well, this was our first time. And when we consider we have about 3,000 emergency childcare programs and over 2,000 applied, I mean, I have to move, we're moving forward with learning. You know, it sounds like there were a lot of tech issues. And this is really good information to have that Joan can bring to the leadership. And also knowing that it looks like we have about 2/3 who have actually applied, which is representative of your hard work. So that's pretty amazing to do that in such a short turnaround time. Heather.
Hi. So we had some providers that had got a little lost in the shuffle, and some were told that their original ECC applications had been lost and things like that. And so I think I'm just thinking ahead that we'll certainly let this process play out and all those time frames come into play. But if they're still feeling like, hey, I applied, I don't know why I would have been turned down for this, and is there going to be a process for them to get that understanding, or is a communication going to go out and communicate why they weren't going to get this grant? And then what do they do if they feel like that's an error?
Yeah, I will inquire further. I'll admit I haven't read every nuance of everything about these grants, so I'm not prepared to say what the process is, but I will find out and we will share that with you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So more to come on that. And so moving on, let's see, what time do we have? Let's take about a 5-minute break. So we'll see you at 11:05. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Let's go ahead and get started again. I hope you all had a moment to stand up. Walk around your house. All right, it looks like everybody's joining us, getting back on. Thank you. So next on the agenda, we're going to be talking about the gradual reopening of the states, this state and the counties, and also kind of looking at what is the status of emergency childcare and the messages that have been going out and what we can expect. I believe you've all seen this very draft document that talks about emergency childcare as we start opening more businesses. So we would have, let's see, Joan, you're still on here. Yes, there you are. Okay, Joan will talk more about this and provide some additional updates. And then I think if we could have an opportunity to hear from all of you what your thoughts are, what you expect, what you've been hearing already as we start moving into this new phase. Okay, so Joan, you want to start with some overview?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So as you know, there's been a lot of stakeholder engagement going on associated with reopening Oregon and the different sectors of the economy that are intended to open, in the initial phases. And of course, I think a recognition by the governor's office and others that childcare is in a sense and kind of in its own unique situation because it supports the reopening of every phase. I mean, it's active now. It needs to continue to be able to be active and to, sort of match its availability as the different sectors of the economy open up. As we were talking about earlier, and Jerry and others were raising important issues about, everyone wanting to make sure that childcare is available sufficiently to support the reopening. So what we understand to be true as of today is that this childcare sector guidance is actually going to be released tomorrow, Wednesday, not on Friday, as we had initially anticipated. And OHA and the governor's office and the early learning division, Office of Child Care, and others have been working diligently on this guidance and other related and associated resources and materials. So I think some of the things, there are definitely, going to be some, how do I want to describe it? With the reopening also comes, some shifts and changes in this guidance. And so it's going to be really important to be familiar with what's in here when it's released and to have your staff be familiar with it. Of course, licensors are going to be and regional managers. It's important to understand the shifts and changes that are in here. So, and of course, what you're looking at on the screen now is not final, and a lot of feedback has been received about it. So I think I mentioned to you last time we were together that one of the things the division wants to do is to begin to offer an opportunity to directly communicate to child care providers. So with the release of this guidance anticipated for tomorrow, we are at this point anticipating that we will be communicating, probably going to end up being later in the day today, about an opportunity for a phone conversation. It's actually going to be a Zoom meeting for child care providers on Thursday evening. you do not need to be worried about communicating about this. Certainly, we'll be sending invitations directly to all licensed and recorded programs, and we will make you aware of that, and we would invite you to share that, but this is not something you're responsible for. We're taking responsibility for communication. So there'll be an opportunity for a call for English speakers will be held on Thursday evening from 6 until 7. Speakers we anticipate for that call will be Miriam Calderon, Amy Joyce, and then we're working on getting a speaker from OHA to really talk about the public health rationale for the guidance and why we need to have it, and the special particular needs of it associated with COVID-19. And then on Saturday morning, we anticipate from 11 until 12 that we will be offering a Spanish speakers phone call, Zoom meeting. That will, Miriam Calderon will take the lead for that. And then we'll also have Tammy Scott on there representing the Office of Child Care along with Amy, because Tammy is a fluent Spanish speaker. And then other associated staff. So as soon as all the invitation is kind of set and we know all the time frames and everything, we will let you know. But we decided that with the release of this guidance and with how much the draft guidance was pushed out in a variety of ways that were not always productive, that it would be very helpful for the Early Learning Division to be able to talk directly to child care providers about this guidance and what it means. And we will be accepting questions during that Zoom meeting through the chat box. It won't be a live voice-to-voice questioning, but we will take questions in the chat box and we will be able to answer some of those questions, and then we'll collect the rest of the questions and make them available through FAQs. So here's the real deal though. There's only 500 spaces on these phone calls. So we anticipate being able to stream on either Facebook or YouTube, but it will not allow the same kind of interaction as being on the Zoom meeting itself. And so we would ask all of you, of course, who might be interested, like, do not get on the Zoom meeting. This is an opportunity for us to talk to child care providers. We need to preserve those 500 spaces for child care providers. This will be recorded. It will be available to you. And once I understand a little bit more about the streaming part, if it's possible for that to be something that you can join without getting in the Zoom queue, we'll let you know. But please allow us to preserve the 500 spaces for child care providers. So, because we know that's not very many. Though who knows? I mean, it's our first go around at this. But we're feeling like this is the time for us to start to try to do this with the hope that we might be able to address some of the concerns that are being raised, or at least help people feel that they were somewhat heard in their concerns. So, we also understand, just a couple more quick things, we also understand that there's going to be guidance for summer camps and summer school. Those are not, we don't anticipate that will be coming out on Wednesdays. Our understanding is that will come out on Friday. But again, those are all timelines that are subject to change. But I think all of that is an indication that, you know, reopening is starting to happen, and working with public health, the different state agencies, whether it's ELD or ODE, are really trying to understand the public health implications that can allow for certain activities to be able to resume that help to support people having care for the children, being able to go back to work or work in different ways than they have. So I think that's all I want to say, unless, I mean, I'm happy to try to answer questions. Oh, here's one more thing I did want to say. So I'm sure you're all aware that counties can apply to reopen sooner than others, depending on meeting certain conditions. And I think there's been like 16 applications received. It's our understanding that the governor's office is not going to allow for differential operation of childcare by different rules. So if you're going to reopen your county and you're going to do that, childcare still has to follow the same rules, meaning you can't increase the group size and you can't increase the ratios and you can't use a different kind of space. So that's our understanding. We haven't seen that in writing yet. That is not for spreading around and talking to other people about. That is to let you know that we understand that in some of those county applications, people have asked for waivers associated with childcare, so to speak. And right now, we understand that those aren't not going to be allowed. Subject to change, I'm assuming, but at this point, that's understanding. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So Shannon and then Christine had a question in the chat box as well. Go ahead, Shannon.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
We can hear you.
So with all this coming out, is the designation still in our NACWare going to be emergency child care?
Yeah.
I mean, are these people, okay, they're not going to change anything in that respect yet, right? Okay.
No,
that's correct.
We anticipate emergency child care will operate until the end of the emergency unless there is a change that we haven't understood yet, but that is our stance at this point.
And Christine was asking if the draft, I'm sure it'll be updated, but when it is, will be translated into other languages beyond Spanish. I would guess
that's a really
Russian,
great question.
Vietnamese.
I'm assuming that we would want that to be true, and I believe the governor's office is going to translate, but I will check in on that.
Joan, this is Christine. Yeah, all of the communications coming out have been really great about Spanish, but it's been really challenging to communicate important details like the new guidance, which has been falling on my staff a bit. And so anything we can get is really helpful. Additionally, we've been getting a lot of feedback from communities that don't speak English or Spanish that they feel like they've not had a voice in any of this and have no way to engage. And I understand the challenges, I truly do, but it is concerning, and I don't have an answer when I'm posed with that question for folks. And you know, I do tell people that we bring things forward that we hear on up, but that's not quite the same. And so I just don't want to keep repeating that over and over. So if there's any way that we can, I know translation on Zoom calls is challenging, but if there's any way we can do anything, that would be great.
Thanks. I appreciate your feedback, and I'll definitely share it.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. And Shannon is offering to use their go-to because it allows for 1,000.
Yeah, we also have GoToWebinar where we could do that too, but we really think the Zoom platform is just more amenable to what we're trying to do. So, but thank you for that offer. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joan. So are there any other questions specific to what has just been presented with everything about reopening and guidance coming out? Oh, Toby, go ahead.
So providers want to open, we can still recommend them to apply for emergency child care so they can reopen.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, just making sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
And then it looks like Christine has one more question, please.
Sorry, one more. I know the Tri-County area up here is going to be the very last to open, it sounds like, and Multnomah not even looking to apply until about mid-June is last I heard. So my question is that we're getting from childcare and maybe you've already said this, but is childcare opening throughout the state, or will that still follow the county phasing in?
Well, childcare is considered like a statewide thing. It's not considered quite the same. So it would be I mean, as I understand it, you can apply to be emergency childcare if you're closed now. You're welcome to open. You're welcome to open now if you want to. Nothing's stopping childcare from opening as an emergency childcare. And what's going to be changing with these phases is who is eligible to come into emergency childcare, so to speak. So if restaurants reopen in a different way, or other industries, then those personnel, so to speak, are then eligible to use childcare. So it's maintaining the emergency childcare designation. It's following the health and safety guidance and all that, but it's an allowance to be able to serve more than just essential personnel. And I think that's the kind of waves of reopening too that are going to be occurring as well.
Okay, I know, because in Multnomah, obviously we're not going to phase 1 yet, but there are a lot of businesses who voluntarily closed that are starting to reopen now that they've figured out kind of a new business model for themselves. So are you saying that those people now could go to care?
I would like to check on that. I think that's a really good point. And I'm not completely clear, so I don't want to misstate.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Taya Harvey, it looks like you had a question.
Thanks, Margie. And now hearing the rest of that, I actually have 2 questions. So one being just clarifying, programs can only reopen for emergency care, right? Not newly licensed programs. Is that correct? Yes.
So are you saying is ELD licensing programs right now?
Right. I assume the answer is, I thought I heard that it was no, but we've had a couple people calling, surprisingly, that are like, I want to have a licensed program. And we're just telling them we'll stay in contact. It's not an option right now. And I want to make sure that's correct.
I believe that is true too, but I will directly ask that question because I think that would be great to be able to say that for sure. I don't think we are because there's no ability to do any of the inspections that are required. So I don't see how that could happen, but I could be wrong, but let me find out.
Okay, I think we heard that, but that just kind of made me wonder. And then, so the other thing from Christine's last question, I think I clarified this on the last call, but there are providers who are providing emergency care to non-essential employees already, right? I know there are. That's okay, right? Okay.
Yes, because what it actually says is that you have to prioritize. Mm-hmm. So what that means is if, let's say you had 2, I'm going to make up something that's unlikely, 2 families show up, one meets essential personnel definition, the other doesn't, you have to prioritize serving essential personnel. But, and of course, anyone that can keep their children at home should have their children at home. I mean, that's the kind of overarching reality still. I mean, obviously that's changing very quickly here, and we're trying to, keep up with that. But we do understand that there could be some children in care who don't meet the criteria of their parents being essential personnel. But it should be, obviously, we hope, a minimum of children. Because the reality is those families were highly encouraged to keep their children at home, but no one is out there policing this right now. So nor are they going to be at this moment.
So that's basically staying the same then now and in the future. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying for me again. I know I had that question a couple times. Appreciate it.
It's complex. I understand.
And Shannon, do you want to speak to your question that you have in the chat box?
This is Jenna. It was actually my question.
Oh, Jenna. Okay.
Thanks, Jenna. We looked the same, so nobody knows I'm here. So when we log in. So my concern is that I know of at least one, if not a couple of centers in Yamhill County that are not planning on reopening this summer. And I know I have at least one center subdirector who is wanting to do RF for the families of the center that she worked for, just to try and mitigate some of that. And I'm just wondering if there's, I mean, I understand why we're not opening new RFs, but I also am concerned that with centers not reopening, that we're going to have some issues as counties start to reopen.
Yeah, I think I kind of need to explore further about how the Office of Child Care is thinking about this. And then we won't wait until our next call. Once we understand, we'll send information out as soon as we understand it. And that could be as soon as today.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that, sharing that concern, Jessica. And I guess that was another thing. Well, we have Joan here, and she will be sharing things with leadership, and we know that more information is coming out. What is it that you could share with us now as far as what your anticipations are as we start reopening when it comes to childcare? Any thoughts, any things that you're already preparing for that you could share with the rest of the group? Anything you would want to share about your readiness for increasing and supporting parents returning to work, increasing the vacancies? Toby.
I kind of discussed this with Lisa. A lot of our DHS regulated subsidy providers are currently caring for children, and they're wanting to become licensed because they have a need or request from families to take multiple children, where they have 2 or 3 families with a couple kids. So they want to get licensed because I think our regulated subsidies and our relative care providers are caring for, are doing most of the child care in some of our counties. So they're asking us, hey, can I get licensed? Can I take the classes? So I think there is going to be a need, especially for those programs that decide not to open at all and they decide to close their doors. The children are going to be somewhere, and we know that they're going to either be at a relative's house or in the licensed care when counties start to open. So we're getting a lot of requests. I think between my 8 counties, I think we have 15 DHS providers that want to go licensed because families have that need, and they don't want to go over their numbers and get in trouble.
Okay, that's great. And so I'm sure tracking that to prepare them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I asked about doing the IRF Part 2 for them just to get them ready. A lot of them do already have all their safety sets and CPR first aid. They're just waiting to say, can licensing come over? What can we do?
Great. Thank you, Toby. Nancy, and then, Nancy, go ahead.
Okay. First, before I start my question, I just happened to have Facebook pop up on my phone, and it's showing a lovely picture of the Sheriff's Department delivering bleach to one of our child care centers this morning. So
nice. Yay. Thank you for sharing that.
What I'm hearing from our providers is they're very concerned because right now they're emergency child care providers. They're caring for essential personnel or first responders, but as things reopen, their regular families are going to want to come back to childcare, and providers aren't sure what they're supposed to do with that. I mean, they don't want to kick anybody out, but on the other hand, they'd like to keep their regular families.
I think it goes back to that whole prioritizing piece again, in the sense that they never were required to only serve. It really depended on, I think, how people understood prioritize. So I think the question is, that may present some personal challenges. Maybe that's something you all help them coach with, if that means displacing essential personnel, I mean, I think the issue is we're still really asking for essential personnel to be prioritized. So I'm not saying there's an easy answer to this, but if they did have space and those families were coming back and they were part of the industries that are opening up, or they're in a county that's opening up, then I mean, I think they're just going to have to work through some of those problems. Don't really have much more to offer. Maybe others on the call have some other thoughts.
That was almost a direct quote to what I told my staff when they presented the question. I'm like, I don't know. If first responders regular childcare reopens, then perhaps they can move that direction. But I didn't have an answer either. Does anybody else?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, it looks like we have Eva and then Shannon and then Taya Harvey. Eva, go ahead.
I just want to come back to the getting licensing out to do licensing visits for new providers. I worry that we've got school districts that are preparing to shut down at the end of their school year. And that we've got providers who, potential providers who want to open licensed care, and I worry about the lag time between school districts closing their programs and licensing being able to get out and license new programs, that there could be a gap there where there are kids that are needing care, and especially as counties reopen and there's more parents needing care. Just a piece that keeps nagging at me is how are we matching our potential vacancies up with potential need, knowing that our school districts are not planning on continuing if they're not partnered up with another provider. And I don't know that that needs an answer to anything as much as it's a concern.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, and I'll certainly be sharing all these concerns associated with licensure and availability of licensing of new programs, and hopefully we'll be able to give some updated information very soon.
All right, so thank you. Let's go ahead and go to Shannon and then Taya Harvey.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things we're sort of preparing for reopening is taking some of the, I don't know, I guess the ELD suggestions, and with our early learning hub, we've been working with the small business development center here in Salem, and we're going to hold 2 sessions at the end of this month with providers. One's going to be on disaster funding, and the other is going to be on recovery and continuity, but navigating your business through crisis. So we're kind of excited to kind of do that on the cusp of things reopening again, and there will be question and answers and some consultants there that will be available.
That's great, Shannon. Thank you. Okay, and then Taya Harvey.
I don't know if I'm ever going to get used to being Taya Harvey in all the meetings. Which my last
because there's a Taya Nolan.
I know, Eddie. You and I talked about it. So this is just something, I haven't heard anything about this. It just kind of popped into my head when I think it was Joan said something about how, so childcare, we're going to get more information tomorrow, and then summer camps and other programs are going to get more information on Friday. And I know on the, if I'm remembering right, the draft that was out at the bottom, it sounded like they were going to kind of follow suit with some similar limitations. But I think that's really could potentially really impact the demand, because obviously people with school-age children, most of them I know, and myself included, would use the summer camps in the summer for care. And so if those are really limited in capacity, which may even keep them from being feasible for operating, that will obviously have an impact on the demand for care.
I know 211's already been getting requests for summer camps. Yeah, go ahead, Joan. Sorry.
I was just going to say that I haven't seen the summer camp guidance, but my understanding is that we're still talking about very limited, you know, group size, stable groups, limited group sizes, limited number of staff, which, you know, there's a lot of ramifications. I think it will be, definitely will be decisions at different camp settings, to use the term loosely, will have to decide whether or not they can operate under those conditions. You know, an example that was used yesterday is that the social distancing that's required to transport children would mean something like you'd need a school bus to transport like a handful of kids, you know. So when you think about some of the attributes of how, like, so, I mean, everything you see in the reopening is still like hand washing, social distancing, masks in public, like none of that's changing with reopening. So all those things have to be reflected in that guidance as well. So more, I think more specifics when it comes out, obviously.
And we have some really good feedback and comments and things that the CCR&Rs are hearing in the chat box. I'm wondering, Joan, if I could just forward you this chat log and you could maybe highlight, or I could even highlight them before I send them, that you could share with, you know, what we need to prepare for as we're starting to reopen, and what's coming up with childcare, just so leadership has the awareness. So, and then I think John, Lisa, and I can take a look at these along with Sandy and Sydney, and maybe we can kind of brainstorm some guidance on how to support. So it looks like there's issues with that balance of the essential workers. Definitely that's coming up, and their parents who are going back to work. So limited space, following ratio, so as well as what's expected in the guidance. So you may want to talk about this further. There's quite a bit here. Thank you very much. These are things that are really important for, you know, as we start to prepare to open up again, really important things to know. Okay, is there anything else? Any other final comments or questions? All right, so the remaining of time in our meeting, one of the things we wanted to make sure we did is provide some guidance on, you know, we've asked that just leadership be here, and then being able to share information with staff and timing. I guess at this point in time, I just want to ask Joan, is there anything that we talked about today that we want to be careful about getting out, wait for other guidance, or what could be ready to be shared with staff?
I think you could share the timeline on the grants with your staff, because I'm assuming they'll be asked questions about that. So that information, I think, would be good. You could tell them that we anticipate that the child care guidance is going to come out tomorrow, and then whatever it is that you would be directing them to do with it, or how you're going to talk with them about it. You could let them know that the Early Learning Division is going to be hosting a couple of calls. More information will be coming, but just to maybe what I would call forecast that there's going to be some direct communication between ELD and childcare providers to help make sure that, especially during this time, that there feels like there's a more direct channel for providers to interact with the division and the Office of Child Care if need be. I think in terms of the other guidances around camp and summer school, I wouldn't really talk about those yet until we know when really they're coming out. That's just the kind of thing that's going to gin people up being worried about that, especially if, you know, it impacts people's personal lives too, as was already stated. I think you could also let people know that you shared your concerns about some of the experiences that providers had with the application, and that, you know, ELD is following up to see, you know, be able to share those and keep communicating. And then certainly you're welcome to share the information that we sent to you directly if you believe it's the right thing to do. I mean, this is a judgment issue for how you, I mean, the information on the budget reduction exercise, it's going to be public. Whether you share it with them or not, they could receive it in a variety of ways. So if I was you, I would want to be the person sharing it and talking about it versus having them get it in another way. So I think you'll have to do some reassuring to people that, you know, would understand that that's their job about what you've heard. And that, I'm sure John, Margie, or Lisa, if you felt like you wanted to talk over what you wanted to say, would be happy to talk to you about specifics. But you're welcome to tell them that ELD is working to identify ways to mitigate the impact of that cut and understands and values their contributions, because those things are all true.
Great, thank you, Joan. And then we do have a question from Mary Wolf and Hannah. You're still there? Yes. Can we get information about which providers are using subs in our area? Looks like yes. Yes, we can. So you can get that out to everyone. Okay. Thank you. So thanks, everyone. Just the final part of our agenda here is just a chance to kind of process a little bit everything that you've been hearing. So kind of debrief what we've discussed, any comments, thoughts, ahas perhaps you've had about what you might be able to do to support providers as we move forward. Things that you might want to share with each other, just an opportunity for that. And then also what could, and I'm speaking specifically about kind of the support team, John, Lisa, me, Sydney, and Sandy, how can we support you? There's a lot going on, and so what else might we be able to do between these meetings, for these meetings? So any thoughts you want to throw out there? And you can raise your hand. And before we start, though, I just want to, Joan does need to jump off a little earlier, and I just want to thank you, Joan, for everything that you've gone through today and sharing everything. It's been very, very helpful. Thanks. Yes, Toby.
Thanks, Margie. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye. Thank you, Joan.
I just want to say I'm very appreciative of these meetings. I know it's difficult for everybody with all the changes and then just waiting to see what's going to happen next. From being, you know, I was a provider in other states, licensed in other states. Oregon has still, just my perspective on the way they're handling things as being very thoughtful and how they're moving forward and taking the input versus just, you know, looking up what another state's doing and trying to just do their own thing. So it's nice to know that our suggestions or what we're seeing is being taken in consideration.
Great. Thank you, Toby. Anyone else? Any thoughts? Shannon. Oh, and then, sorry, which one was first? Shannon, and then Karen Hankemeyer. Go ahead.
One of the things that I'm sort of needing help on, and maybe it's already done, maybe another R&R has it, but one of the things we're wanting, or providers are asking for is communication, like a flyer of some sort to hand out to parents on the COVID. I mean, there's the flyers that have gone out, and I know some of the COVID requirements can be business-based. You know, maybe a provider requires something that maybe the state doesn't. But one of the things is the transfer of infants and babies from the parents to the provider. You know, you're getting in space within 6 feet of each other, and I guess providers are needing communication or a flyer or something that they can hand to parents that go a little deeper than just the basics. Does that make sense? Like when they're handing out children,
yes,
and I don't know if anybody's done something like that, especially with the transfer of infant and toddlers from provider to parent and parent to provider. If there's a draft sort of policy that somebody can tweak. If not, then maybe I can try to figure one out. But didn't want to duplicate if something's already been done.
Okay. Anyone have any? Go ahead.
This is Carrie at 211. Shannon, I think it would also even be helpful for us to have something like that to send with referrals to parents, just because things are different now, and the information that parents get with the referrals, I feel like it's not completely clear to parents what requirements for emergency care are right now, unless they really dig deep into that ELD COVID page. So I think it would be really helpful to have something really like basic and clear for parents to have.
Well, and I think providers are finding out that some parents don't care, you know, or they're on the real opposite end and aren't wearing their masks or aren't really paying attention to those pieces when they're bringing children to care. And so some providers are concerned and want to just kind of reiterate those pieces to parents when they come. And I don't know what that would look like really, but I mean, I suppose if people can throw a sentence, one-liner on a policy that they've heard in that process, and I could probably put something together. You know,
Shannon, I'm just wondering if this is I'm just noting this. I'm wondering if this is something that TRI, as central coordination, could help with. Hannah, is that something, because we could then get it in the different languages. We could also put it through making sure it's developed, you know, like a grade 6 level, you know, just something that's, and it has, you know, that information, you know, that's clear, kind of like what we've done with the quality indicators and that kind of thing. So I think that's a great suggestion.
A lot of providers are following it, but the parents aren't so much. So
right. Yeah, something that providers could give parents. Okay, great. Thank you, Shannon. So Karen Hinkemeyer, and then Mary Wolf.
Okay, I have 3 things that are really on my mind, and one is the weekly updates with emergency childcare programs. We just don't have the capacity to call all of our programs on a weekly basis, so those expectations change. I am also concerned about our communities of color and those that speak a language other than English. If only 6% in Spanish have filled out the ECC form, they're the hardest hit with COVID-19. We have to change what we're doing. And so just that's on my mind a lot. And then in addition to the possible reductions for our focused childcare network, I'm really looking at a huge reduction when it comes to the fees that I receive for trainings. Currently, I don't have the ability to say, okay, I'm not gonna, what am I trying to say? So I don't want to charge providers right now.
I think that would be like, here's a knife in you, let's do it a couple more times, right? So I count on those fees to help with a partial, like 0.5 QIS, and also a full-time admin to support the trainings that we do. So if I don't have those fees coming in, I don't have the ability to keep that staff. So we really need to look at, yes, other funding, but I can't do that right now.
Karen, like, I wish I could. I have to charge. I mean, that's part. I have to keep that going. I know many people don't, but if I don't, then like you say, I lose staff. I don't have the luxury, I guess.
Yeah. So these are these kind of 3 top things, Karen, that are on, just kind of bringing this forward, something that we really need to be aware of, especially with reductions and where providers are right now with the loss that they're experiencing. So how do we bring them, supporting you, supporting providers, and then also the communities of color. I think that, my cousins are from Detroit, and they posted some things about COVID-19 and the communities of color being hit in Detroit. It's horrible, and we're seeing it everywhere. So thank you. So with the charging, this would be a good conversation to come back to about how we're going to move forward in the new world and how we support providers of getting their professional development. Thank you. Mary, did you have something?
Well, one is just a question about the Zoom meeting, which I think that's a great idea. And if I understand correctly, you're talking about Thursday and Saturday, which is coming right up. Right. And it's something we definitely would want to help spread the word to our providers, and include the Zoom link. And then if there's a link to the YouTube, where if there's an overflow, people could be sure to get on and hear it, because I think it's a really good idea to have that information come from the top. So we definitely want to help people, be aware of it and be able to attend. And then the other thing is, as far as when we might have a better idea of our funding in terms of, should we be hiring? We're certainly not. We've stopped, but that was something that was an expectation. And the sooner we can sort of have a sense of where we are and what we need to do, that would be really helpful.
Right. Thank you. That's good. Good reminders. And we hope to have information about that after the 20th. What's that?
I just wanted to add that if we are in a position where we might have to reduce someone's FTE or potentially even lay off a QIS, our QIS is at least our union, and so we have to give them 3 months notice. So we do need to be as prepared as possible as we move forward with information.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. All right.
I've got Heather and then
Carrie.
Christine.
Oh, thank you. I missed them.
Heather. I'm going to bring up something that's quite a bit off topic, but I was in a meeting yesterday, and somebody from Head Start was communicating their new wage range. So I don't know how many of these cuts are going to play into what Head Start can offer their bachelor degree employees, which is amazing. But I'm almost curious how this is going to play out even in our next biennium, because they're looking at wages up to $25 an hour for a lead teacher. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, that's several dollars away from our quality improvement specialist positions. And so I see that being a concern, and I recognize that's in the distance a little bit, but just how we hire and what our process is and how we, we have, in my mind, we've always said that we're the teachers that are training teachers. So it was just one of those thoughts.
Yeah.
And then a second thing is that I'm trying to understand. So the draft form of what we saw today, it got out to our unions, and there was a lot of conversation around it. And then there was a lot of calls from providers to fight that. So I had seen Christine's comment about the ratios and things like that, and I didn't know if much of that had changed from the original draft, because my providers think they won that argument. So I'm a little curious. I feel like I missed a step or something like that. But
that's the last we have. What you saw today was the last we have. So we don't have anything new yet. And I expect we'll have it. It sounds like we're going to have it today or tomorrow.
Okay.
So.
All right. Thanks. Sorry, those were my two things.
Bye-bye.
Sure. And then Christine, and then Carrie.
Yeah, thanks, Marnie. I have to keep elevating what Karen was saying about the equity piece of all of this. And I'm just seeing it time and time again. I mean, even the calls coming on Thursday night, our advocates in the field are going to get that information out, and it's not going to go out to anyone who speaks a language other than English. And so again, they are left with no communication about it if I don't have a way to get them on the call and get them in the know. And I feel like we're the only organization doing that work right now, and it is hard and it is heavy lift. And I just see it happen with the preschool promise applications that happened, with this grant application it happened, and now with these calls it's happening, and it's so much in a short amount of time, and it's really hard to look the other way. And I feel like we have to keep saying it and keep challenging our system to do better. And I'm willing to work with ELD if we can do a different session. I'd love to host them. My staff would love to do that with you guys. So I just want to put that on the table.
Thank you, Christine. Yeah. We'll take this back to Joan, definitely, and she'll take it to leadership. Thank you. Carrie.
My
Did you want to
question.
talk, Carrie?
Yeah, can you hear me? Sorry, I was on mute.
Yeah.
My question kind of goes back to what we've been talking about with the Zoom calls. I just wanted to clarify what I'm understanding. Will there be news releases going out about the changes, and then the Zoom calls will happen afterward, or will the Zoom calls happen first and then news releases? Because again, like Christine, we get a lot of the same calls I think that you do from people that speak other languages who see something on the news and then they call us for clarification. But sometimes we don't have the information as quickly as it gets put on the news. And so I just kind of wanted to put the word out that like anything ahead of the news media releases is really helpful for us, especially for the populations that Christine's talking about, that like they don't really hear it anywhere else other than on the news. And then if we're on the same page with what's happening, we can help clarify. Also for staffing purposes, I like to know like right ahead of time so I can have enough people on the phones or people that speak the right languages on the phones.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I believe the news release will go first, but I'm not really sure. So, but I will check with Joan about that. So,
and I know we can't always control when the news gets a hold of information too, but if there's a plan.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah. Trying to make sure everybody's in the loop every time something goes out too. That's what we're trying to do. Well, it is noon, and we've come to the end of the call. I want to thank everyone so much for your time and your feedback and your thoughts, really heartfelt thoughts, and what we're seeing ahead of us is going to be another heavy lift. Actually, it's been keeping me awake nights, as if I don't have anything else keeping me awake nights. This also has. So anyway, really, we're in this together, and I just want to thank all of you for everything and all of the work that you're doing. And we will stay in touch, and I'll get this chat log to Joan too with all of this, all the great feedback in here, along with the notes. So thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.